news. Joining us right now to react is Texas Congressman, House Judiciary Member Louie Gohmert. And Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Are you surprised that Beijing comes back with a punch in the face with $75 billion of U.S. goods getting taxed 5 to 10%?
Yeah, it's totally expected. It is the art of the deal. We take a move. They don't want to lose face. They make a move. It's not that big of a move, but it's like Peter was saying. They're hemorrhaging on the supply side, and so they've got enough problems in Hong Kong. The last thing they need is for the biggest economy in the world, us, to be in a tariff war with them. So I think I'm grateful we have a president that understands how badly we were losing the import-export war with China, and it's time to make it mutually beneficial. So I think it's totally
and it's not just the import-export war, but it's all the other things, right? The 7 sins, as Peter Navarro calls it.
Yeah, the technology, you betcha. You bet. Those are huge problems, and they've been stealing them for years. So thankfully, we have a president that's standing up to them, and it's about time.
Let me bring in the panel here.
And by the way, if the Fed... Yeah, if the Peter was saying, hopefully the Fed will have America's back. Well, they've certainly had the Democrats' back for years. They were lowering rates and doing everything they could to make the Obama economy look better than it was, and then they turn around and hurt the Trump
Right.
economy.
Well, let's not forget that was on the heels of the worst recession in a generation. So that was after 2007. Yeah. But you're right. The whole Obama administration, presidency, he had rock bottom rates, and that was a result of what we had just come through, and we all lived through that. I've got Gary B. Smith and Krishna Memani and John Hilsenrath here. Let me get some reaction. Louie Gohmert is with us, the congressman from the Judiciary Committee. But your reaction to what took place, talking to Peter Navarro, and right as soon as we're about to begin the conversation, Beijing announces these retaliatory moves.
Well, so all the things that Mr. Navarro said about Fed and reaction and currency implications and things like that are absolutely correct. That is, if the Fed doesn't react accordingly to what's happening everywhere else, in the process of not reacting, they will basically have a significantly negative effect on the U.S. economy because of the dollar. However, all the things that he says about trade and tariff and lack of its impact on growth is just not true. We know that. It's a fiscal consolidation. It's a tax on U.S. consumer, and therefore, as a result, there's an impact on growth rate. And if the $300 billion taxes go through, that'll probably shave off roughly half a percentage point.
I said the market gave its verdict instantaneously.
That's true.
You can't say it doesn't matter. The market is pricing in future developments, and it saw it right
But
there.
I said to him, isn't it true that business spending went down because of the trade uncertainty? He said no.
That's just not true. We talk to CEOs all the time, and they say tariff is the biggest uncertainty for them to increase investments. Whether he likes that answer or not doesn't change the fact that that's how they feel.
That's what's happening.
I do kind of agree with him, though. He said one very important thing. He said we have tariffs in place for a while, and the economy keeps doing well. We saw that from the retailers. We talked in the break amongst the three of us that part of the reason Trump wanted to scale back on the tariffs was to not impact the U.S. consumer. We've had these tariffs, and yet the consumers that are executing well have positive guidance. So they're saying, look, we've already baked in the effect of
Let's not forget what the Toys R Us CEO mentioned. The former CEO, Jerry Storch, the other day, was on the show and said, we have not seen an impact from these tariffs on consumer goods yet. So then it's speculation. Then it's all speculation.
We have seen the impact of all of this from a business investment.
That's true.
In the
that I agree with.
It's business investment. That's the channel that this is working through. I think the consumer piece happens last. What has to happen first before anything happens to consumers is on the hiring front. I think we've seen hours worked slow.
Yeah.
And I think the big question, I keep saying, you have to keep watching this show the first Friday of every month, because if job growth slows, then we see a consumer.
And next Friday, let me say goodbye to Congressman Louie Gohmert, because Congressman, I really wanted to ask you about Patrick Byrne and about what's going on in terms of the FBI scandal. That will have to wait for another day. We so appreciate your time this morning because
keep in mind, a bigger impact on the economy has been when the Fed talks about recession. That drops the market 800 points. That has a real effect when the Fed is negative like that.
No doubt. And that's why we're all focused on, in an hour and a half, we'll hear from Jay Powell. He's got his speech coming out in Jackson Hole. But Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for rolling with it today with all of the breaking news, joining the conversation.